Expedition 33 is a masterpiece with many skills to work with, but with so many variables like picto and weapon effects, on top of the vague descriptions we're getting in-game, the value of each skill can easily be misjudged. Previously, I've extensively tested every skill to get their numbers, but in this video I'll be ranking these abilities not only based on damage, but also by utility, synergies and accessibility. If you're interested in the numbers, make sure to check out my other videos for the spreadsheets. I will reference these numbers throughout this video, but I will also put up a modded description of each skill for a better overview. Just keep in mind that the damage shown in that description does not account for the quicktime events, but I will generally assume perfect input, so if you hear me mentioning slightly higher damage numbers, it's because I'm including quicktime events which can add 10, 20 or even 40% damage. And when we're talking about percentages or multipliers, it means it's dealing damage equal to your attack power times that multiplier. With all that being said, let's get into the ranking itself. In F tier I'll put skills that I think you should never even equip. C tier are going to be skills that aren't as bad, but generally just outclassed by other abilities. In B tier we have skills that can be good in more specific contexts. In A tier I'll have skills that you will generally get a lot of mileage throughout the game and you're pretty happy to have most of the time, but they're not going to reach the potential of our S tier skills, which are going to be skills that overperform so much, you basically have to build around them in the late game. And the ordering will be based on the position on the skill tree, starting with early game skills. First off, Electrify, a one-cost ability that just doesn't do much. It deals terrible damage that is doubled on critical hits, which are barely happening early on in the game, but then it also gains double damage for consuming a red stain, which then also gives you a light stain back. The stain upgrade effect isn't bad by itself, but you're still spending a turn doing basically nothing. Instead of using this ability, you could just basic attack, which would be 100% of your attack power, and you can increase it with augmented attack, which you get early on in the game, and it outdamages even a stained Electrify. It also generates 1 AP rather than consuming 1, which means you'll have 2 more AP next turn compared to using Electrify. And then there are many other good ways to improve your basic attack. You could also just use an item to gain even more AP instead, which will let you use higher impact abilities on the following turns. The only upside of using Electrify is that it grants you stains, but the issue is it's 2 yellow stains and you generally don't want multiple of the same stain. There are only 2 skills that can even use 2 yellow stains at once, and then there are also better ways of getting stains even early in the game. For example, with the weapon that gives you stains on free aimed shots, which you will likely be using quite early in the game. This lets you convert AP into stains without even using your turn. So yeah, a lot of yapping just to put this garbage into F tier, but I hope this highlights that the opportunity cost for these low impact abilities isn't just their AP cost, but everything you're missing out on for not resorting to basic actions instead. So F tier basically means it's pretty much always better to just use an item or base attack over wasting a turn on that skill, and Electrify is a perfect example for an F tier skill in my opinion. Immolation is another low-cost ability. It also deals less impact damage than a base attack, but it has the upside of applying free burns, and applying burn is super good and impactful. Now, how does burn work? Well, it lasts 3 turns, and to the best of my knowledge, it's supposed to deal 50% base damage per tick, with some diminishing returns once you go beyond 10 stacks, but there seems to be a bug where your own character's defense stat reduces your burn damage dealt, which seems crazy, but I was actually getting different burn numbers with different characters when testing every skill's damage, while everything else was making perfect sense. So yeah, it's kind of strange, but early game burn is especially potent because none of that weird stuff really affects us, and 3 burn stacks will deal around 150% base each turn, which outdamages skills like Electrify in itself. Applying burn also enables many burning synergies for pictos and skills. Now, as for the conditional effects, I don't think they're worth paying attention to. The base damage is so low that you don't care about the 50% stain bonus damage, and you also don't want to consume a mark with that same low damage hit. But overall, Immolation is actually quite useful early on, as it can add up to high amounts of damage and enable synergies, but it does get outclassed pretty quickly, which is why I put it into C tier. Next up we have Ice Lance. Now Ice Lance costs 4, which isn't great by itself, but abilities that cost 4 or more typically generate 2 stains, one of their element and a light stain, which is nice because this type of stain generation is really what's going to let you get the high damage turns. It also applies slow, which is a powerful status effect that also lets you trigger certain picto effects, but the issue with Ice Lance is that its damage is atrociously bad and its single target The stain bonus damage is also terrible, but because of the stains generated and the slow, it can be somewhat useful early on, but it does also get outclassed by a different ability, so I am putting it into C tier as well, although I do think it's much worse compared to Immolate. And then we have Earth Rising. It's your cheapest AoE ability and the damage is actually decent. At 3 AP you can always cast it turn 1 without any Pictos and it will serve you well until you get higher impact abilities and more starting AP. I'll put this into B tier because it's pretty good early on, but it won't see any use after that. Healing Light. I was excited to see my girl having healing abilities, but playing the game you will realize how bad healing skills are. There are many reasons for healing skills being bad, but this one is also just outclassed by using a healing tint. It won't cost you AP, a skill slot, and can get you more health back, and everyone can do it. But even then it's also just better to let them die and revive them rather than proactively using a turn to apply a heal that may not even make a difference. So yeah, F tier for being outclassed by an item available to everyone and single target healing being bad in general. Now for the next level of abilities we have Thunderfall, which costs 5 AP and hits random targets with lightning strikes. If a target is isolated, all the strikes will hit that one target for full damage. You would think it would excel at killing isolated targets, but it doesn't. Its damage is complete garbage. Even against a single target, it deals like 200% damage total. That's like less than Immolation after one burn tick, which costs less than half AP and is targeted. The stain bonus is also pretty bad. Your critical hits will deal double damage by adding extra hits, but you won't have high crit chance early on. And even when you meet all conditions, stained 100% crit chance against an isolated enemy, you're looking at like 650 total, which may not seem bad, but it's only been cheap starter abilities so far. It's actually really bad compared to the other abilities coming up with less limitations and more utility. By the time you can hit the conditions, you have much better options. There's basically a direct upgrade to this ability that's actually good, dealing like 10 times as much damage. But until then, this is not even remotely useful. This is definitely F tier. It has no utility and terrible damage. So what's the point? And then we have Wildfire. It's basically an AoE immolation. It costs 4, which is like the best cost for generating stains because that's when you're getting 2 stains per cast. It's also cheap enough to have it available on your first turn with just 1 energized start Picto. And this skill makes an amazing turn 1 for most of the game, honestly. It deals 150% with perfect inputs and applies 3 burns in an area of effect. If you fail the QuickTime event, it actually doesn't go off and damages yourself. The game doesn't even tell you that until you've already learned it. Then I think it just says it deals like risky fire damage or something, which is kind of funny, but yeah, you really shouldn't be failing it. It's also like the most generous QuickTime event in the game, but there's also an in-game option to automatically pass every QuickTime event at the cost of not getting the bonus damage from perfect inputs. So the fail clause shouldn't ever be a concern because the skill is absolutely amazing. I have talked about Immolation and Burn. This basically casts a higher damage Immolation on every enemy. It has the perfect AP to stain generation ratio. You can get it ready super early. Enable burn synergies on all enemies, so CL for example can follow it up with Searing Bond. Mayel can get into Virtuoso stance with Swift Stride. There are Pictos increasing damage and crit chance versus burning enemies. And most importantly, you can refund half of the AP spent with the Beneficial Contamination Picto, which gives you 2 AP back when you apply status effects, which is super good. The impact damage isn't the best, but even with just the first burn tick, your enemies will take around 300% damage before they even get to act. That's already better than what you would get if you would cast Thunderfall on each single enemy and they keep on burning for more damage too. The stain upgrade isn't super exciting because the damage is backloaded into the burn, but honestly, it's also nice to have abilities that don't suck without their stain upgrades, and this is one of them. You can get a lot of mileage from the skill. It's coming online relatively early, and you may even find some utility with the skill late game. But when it comes to damage potential, it just won't ever compete with the higher damage abilities, so I think it deserves a solid A tier. Next up we have Thermal Transfer. Costs 2, deals base attack damage and restores 4 AP against burning enemies. An easy condition to meet for Lune, so it kind of acts like a different base attack for her. It's a 2 AP gained compared to 1 AP from base attacks, and it also generates a blue stain. Now you can use a bunch of Pictos to make base attacks much better, but this one works fine without any investment. If you have 2 earth stains, you can also play again, which is great. Now, it won't be the most impactful extra turn you're taking, but it does help you regain AP, which is very important for Lune. So it is definitely something that you will be able to make use of for the majority of the game, at least as a filler ability in place of base attacks. But late game, the extra turn won't stack with Cheetah, and its minimal impact just doesn't keep up with other options later on in the game because you'll have more ways of getting AP and stains. So B tier for being useful for most of the game, but then completely falling off. Next up we have Rockslide, a 5 AP single target ability that deals OK damage by default, but it's the first ability here that gets a massive ×5 damage multiplier with stains, resulting in an almost ×14 attack power multiplier, which is actually going to be the highest damage skill at this stage in the game. It does consume 3 stains, but the effect is obviously very significant. It's not going to compete with her highest damage abilities, but the skill can break, and it is her most reliable break ability. So you have the flexibility of breaking without stains, doing base damage, but you can also deal respectable damage with the skill should you have the stains. But you should never use it without breaking or having the stains. So I'd put it into low A tier, being her only reliable break ability that can also surprise you with its damage. And then Rebirth, it's kinda like Healing Light, where it's basically an item. You can just use a reviving tint on any character without paying attention to your AP or skill points. Now, I do think this is much better than Healing Light because reviving is actually pretty OP, and there could be scenarios where this may be better than an item because you won't run out of it and it can generate a light stain. While reviving, it's also only a small AP net loss because the revived character does get some AP as well. But for the most part, I still think it belongs into F tier because an item can just do the same thing. And if you commonly find yourself needing this ability on top of reviving tints, it's probably time to respec. Elemental Trick. Elemental Trick deals a small amount of single target damage of each of the 4 elements and generates the respective stains on critical hits. One cute thing about this is that it can help you identify which elements your enemies are weak or resistant to, but with its low damage, its main purpose is generating stains for other abilities. The problem here is that it only generates stains on crits, so you need to have high crit chance to make use of it. Early on you will have pathetically low crit chance, and this ability won't do anything. Even once you get like 50% crit chance, it's basically 2 random stains on average, which is still worse than just using like any 4-cost ability that will generate 2 stains more reliably, of which one will be a light stain as well, and that ability will also do much more. So it basically only becomes useful when you can hit a 100% crit rate, which is very late into the game, so that's kind of limiting. But how good is it with a 100% crit chance? Well, you spent a turn and 3 AP to deal basically no damage that's relevant at this point in the game to get all 4 stains. Now, stains are super important to get high damage. Your highest damage spells will deal triple or even 5 times as much damage, so it's definitely worth setting them up. Those 4 stains will allow you to set up most abilities. It's perfect for Elemental Genesis, and that's a pretty decent 2-turn combo, but it won't allow you to set up the, in my opinion, best ability because of AP constraints, and many weapon effects will have other ways of generating stains each turn and let you use different ways of setting up the heavy hitting stuff just as quickly while having a more impactful stain generator turn. And that's why I will put it into B tier. It has some uses and it can be a key component of your rotation, but many weapons will allow alternative stain setups, and the skill only becomes usable at the end of the game basically. And now to the next tier of abilities with Lightning Dance. This is Thunderfall, but good, amazing actually. It's functionally the same. Random targeting, so you want to hit one enemy and double hits on critical hits. but for only 2 more AP it deals double the damage, which still isn't great honestly, but the stain bonus for this skill makes it deal 5 times as much damage, making it like a 22 times base multiplier that you can double with crits for a maximum of like 43 times your attack power, which is the highest damage Lune can do with a skill. Now, even though you ideally would have a 100% crit rate for this, it's not like an all or nothing situation. It scales linearly with crit rate. So even 50% crit would make you deal 50% more damage on average with the extra hits, and that would already put it at like a 33 multiplier, which is so much higher than anything at this point. It does take 3 stains for the power up, and it is crit reliant, but you kind of want crit anyways. It's just good for damage regardless, and any ability that deals this much damage will need at least 3 stains. So being the highest damage single target skill for Lune that also has some synergies with on hit effects, because it can do up to 12 hits per use, it's an easy S tier. Next up, Fire Rage, a really unique ability. If you use it, you deal a low amount of damage to all enemies, and then the next turns, she will automatically cast it again and the damage will increase. The way it scales is a really complicated formula, but it basically gets a big increase from turn 1 to turn 2, and then the increase diminishes each turn. So it takes a really long time to reach damage that can compete with her heavy hitter skills. It's not like something you want to use late game because of that. I mean, it would literally take you like 10 turns to get as much damage as doing her highest damage skills every second turn. You also should get 2 blue stains before you commit to Fire Rage, otherwise you're dealing half damage. So that's even more time that you need to scale up the damage. So that makes it pretty bad already. But then it also has the downside of getting interrupted as soon as you take damage. And not only do you lose the damage scaling, but you also get stunned and miss your next turn, which is super bad. It's also the only fire ability that doesn't apply burn for whatever reason. So there are many really bad things about this ability, and it doesn't have anything good going for it, except maybe potentially being AP efficient, I guess, because you only have to pay 5 AP once, but it's still not worth it. Steaming Garbage, F tier. A shame, because it's an interesting ability by design, high risk, high reward, but there's just no reward to be had. And then we have Crippling Tsunami. This is basically an upgrade to Iceland's. It deals more damage and is AoE for just 1 more AP. This ability is great turn 1 for debuffing every enemy while dealing some damage, get some EP back with the beneficial contamination picto, and build stains for your heavy hitters. But also the stain bonus makes it deal 5 times as much damage. So with stains and perfect inputs, you're looking at a times 15 multiplier, which is pretty respectable for a skill with this much utility. A great skill with many uses that you can be happy to have equipped all the time basically. Kinda like the cold version of Wildfire, but costs 1 more, with the upside of being able to deal really good damage too, and better scaling into late game because burn damage falls off while slow remains powerful. Solid A tier next to Wildfire. Next up, Crustal Crush, the bigger Rockslide. This one costs 7 and deals 630% damage up front without conditions. That can be tripled with stains, which it only requires 2, but it's 2 stains of the same type, so you're limited to lightning abilities setting it up. For a 2 stain consumption, this times 19 multiplier is really good, but I just can't think of like a reliable way to really make good use of it and be worth it. At 7 AP, it is the same cost as Lightning Dance, which has much higher damage potential. And unlike Rockslide, this one doesn't break. It does have a unique break damage modifier, making it deal a lot of break damage, but I don't think that's good enough. So it's not bad, but I don't think it really fits into any role you would want for the most part. So I must say this is a B tier for me. And then Revitalization. This skill can heal your whole team by almost 50% for 5 mana. The stain bonus is not that great because it's not reliable, taking 3 stains, and there are better ways to apply regen. but even without the bonus, this is undeniably a high impact ability. Many enemies can deal high AoE damage, and if you miss the dodge or parry, your whole team takes damage, and this can make up for that miss. So it may look strong, but the thing with heals in this game is that they're not great. Not because healing itself isn't good, but because the alternatives are kind of broken. There are revives, which can let the revived character act immediately, so it's not a big action economy loss like in other games. There are shields, but most importantly, there is a 3-picture combination of Confident Fighter, and Inverted Affinity that basically makes you take half damage and make you deal double damage, which is completely broken, and it's hard to justify not taking those when there are shields and revives on top of just taking half damage. That makes you more resilient and deal more damage. There are also many other ways of healing, and although this is a very effective way of keeping your team alive, just the existence of the OP picture combination makes this much less useful in my opinion. So I'll put it into C tier. It's not as bad as the F tier abilities, but its usefulness is pretty limited in reality. And then Mayhem is a really cool skill. It consumes all of your stains to deal damage, and it doesn't generate any, so it is a payoff skill. The damage per hit and the hit count both scale with stains consumed, so it scales exponentially with the amount of stains, so you really want to use it with 4 stains. When you do it, it deals around 13 times damage, which is really good for a free cost ability. It also breaks, but only with 4 stains consumed, which is why I preferred Rockslide for the breaking utility. But Mayhem is actually a skill that you can set up quite early to do a lot of damage pretty easily. The weapon that generates random stains on free aim shots is amazing in general, and extra nice with Mayhem because you can convert AP into stains, and Mayhem converts any stains into high damage and only costs 3 AP. It's generally really good at using stains that you can't utilize otherwise, while also dealing good damage. It's not going to be better than using specific stains on abilities like Lightning Dance, but until you get better setups and more AP for higher damage abilities, Mayhem will not let you down. A tier, super flexible, easy to use, good damage. And now for the last set of abilities, starting with Stormcaller, an interesting 2-part ability. First off, it deals damage at the end of your enemy's turn for 3 turns, which is like the least ideal dot timing, because your enemies always get to act before they take that damage. The damage is also very low, pathetically bad, and the stain bonus just doubles that pathetic damage. And then the more interesting portion of that skill is that the enemies take a tiny amount of damage each time they are hit during those 3 turns. And this applies to all characters and is especially effective with high hit count skills. So in long fights you can throw it out and your whole team gets bonus damage until your enemy has taken 3 turns. This sounds great by design, but the damage is just so low that you would need your whole team to use a bunch of multi-hit skills to make this worth it. So it's good if you build around it, but I feel it's not as good as it should be even in that scenario. Super interesting ability. I remember looking through her skill tree on my first playthrough, and I was definitely excited by this skill. I'm sure many players were, but the numbers just aren't good enough to be too useful outside of super specific setups. On hit weapon effects like the burn on crit, gradient on crit, gradient versus stunned enemies picto, can make really good use of it, but for general use it's on the weaker side, so I am putting it into B tier. Next up, Hell. Hell is Lune's most expensive ability. Is it worth it? Well, it's a cracked up Wildfire dealing almost 10 times as much damage while applying 10 burn stacks to each enemy, and I've said many good things about Wildfire. So yeah, it is. It just does everything. Area of effect, status effects, high impact damage unlike Wildfire, and also triple damage with stains, putting it at a 36 multiplier just for the impact damage, and then you still have the 10 burn stacks. So if you include the burn, it does actually out damage Lightning Dance in an AoE, and then there's the burn synergies, all the Pictos, and with so many burn stacks applied, you might also want to use double burn Picto, maybe longer burn for longer fights. With so many burn stacks, you also massively increase Mayhel's burning canvas damage, for example. So I do think it's much better than Lightning Dance. Even the cost difference is made up with beneficial contamination, giving you 2 AP for applying the burns. You even get 1 on top once you have Energy Master. And again, there are so many other things that you can trigger with burn. You do it in an area of effect as well. It also has a really high break modifier of 70%. So it will deal massive amounts of break damage too. I haven't really talked much about break damage because she doesn't deal that much in general. But if you care, I do have a very short video on break damage with Lune as an example that you can check out. But yeah, the skill does basically everything. If you have the AP, it's worth it. It's even good enough without the stains turn 1. It will still outdamage even most upgraded abilities with a few exceptions. It's amazing. You always win with this. Well, actually, you don't always win. It can kill you occasionally, I guess, but you need to fail the quick time event for that to happen. And if it happens from time to time, it's kind of funny. I don't even consider this a downside. I guess it could get old real quick if you die all the time failing the event. But in that case, just enable the auto pass in the options, but I wouldn't hold that against the ability. So yeah, easy S tier, the very top with a bonus fun factor. And then we have Typhoon, an expensive but very interesting ability with multiple components. First off, it immediately deals 170% impact damage to all enemies, which the game literally doesn't tell you. It's like an Earth Rising you get for free and the game just omits that information. I mean, it's one thing to give us these vague quantifiers, but that part is just straight up missing. It then also deals 350% damage with perfect inputs to all enemies while healing your team by 20% on your turn start for 3 turns. So a couple of things here. If you have Cheater, it will immediately trigger on your bonus turns, so you use up the duration quite quickly. If you use this turn 1 with Cheater, you will immediately deal just over 500% damage and then another 700% over the next double turn. So the total damage is around 12 times, which is quite good. That's like 2 Crustal Crushes. The stain bonus extends the duration by 2 turns, which is a 40% boost, which is really bad for taking 3 stains. But that's okay because you want some stain generators too. Its break multiplier is actually even higher than Hell. Typhoon has the full 100%, so unstained it will break even more compared to Hell. But the draw of this ability isn't really the damage, but the healing. And I'm not talking about the health restored, which is nice, but more importantly, it can trigger so many Picto effects and you can have the craziest combos. Healing lets you apply buffs with stuff like accelerating heal, rush, powerful, and all that. And applying buffs can then trigger other things like regaining AP, for example. I don't want to get into every single Picto, but with enough setup, you could use Typhoon to heal and fully buff your whole team, while also fully refilling your AP every single turn as long as Typhoon is active. And that's like the strongest part about it. The utility is astounding and you also get some decent damage on top of that. I think you could argue it's an S tier skill, but once again, I feel like it is being held back by the whole, if you disable your heals, you become 4 times a strong thing that we have in the game right now, and characters that can't be healed won't trigger the on-heal effects, which is why I'll take it down to A tier, but I would love to hear you guys' opinions on that one. Next up, Terraquake, also quite interesting and very similar to Typhoon actually. Just like Typhoon, it immediately deals damage that the game doesn't tell you about. It's as much as a base attack, and then it's 180 on your turn start for 3 turns as well. It doesn't have a healing component, which means you won't get all the utility that Typhoon can get, but instead it debuffs all enemies to take 50% more break damage from all allies, which is quite a significant bump in break damage for everyone. It also has the full 100% break damage multiplier. Now its damage won't be as high, it will be roughly 640%, like half of Typhoon, but Terraquake only costs 5. Also not worth using with stains and more of a stain generator skill that deals okay damage over time while also applying a huge break debuff multiplier. It's a nice skill for sure. I would use it like Wildfire or Crippling Tsunamy. Nice to use on your turns where you don't have the resources to cast a big payoff skill, so you use those instead to apply debuffs, gather some stains while dealing some damage. But a downside of Terraquake is that it doesn't officially apply a status effect, so you're not getting the beneficial contamination AP. But on the upside, it does deal more damage total and helps breaking. Solid A tier, just behind these two. And then last but definitely not least, Elemental Genesis. This is your stain jackpot when Mayhem is your consolation prize, and Mayhem isn't even bad. Elemental Genesis takes 1 stain of every element to cast, but it does use light stains, so it's actually not that hard to set up, and the damage is super high. It's a 33.6 damage multiplier with perfect inputs to all enemies, and it only costs 4 AP. The cost is actually quite a huge advantage. The only abilities that outdamage Elemental Genesis are Lightning Dance and Hell, and they cost significantly more AP. And honestly, the stains aren't that much easier to set up, even though they take 1 less stain. Because you typically gain stains in pairs, it's never bad to use the skill, it's never bad to try to set up the ability, and it's probably easier to get an Elemental Genesis build going compared to Hell, for example. There's Elemental Trick into Genesis, the weapons that generate 2 random stains on turn start and then use an ability to get the remaining stains. But it's not like you have to even choose between Hell and Genesis, you can just have both, and there's no reason to not always have Elemental Genesis in your loadout, and it's never bad to use Elemental Genesis. That's an S tier skill. I think it's better than Lightning Dance, being area of effect and easier to set up, on par with Hell I would say, although I like Hell more because it's good even without the stains and it has that fun factor. So yeah, that's the list. Let me know if you agree, where you disagree and why. Just make sure to listen to what I actually said about a certain skill instead of just skipping to the end, looking at the ranking and calling me an idiot for putting your favorite skill into B tier, okay? Let me know if you like the format, if there's anything I could improve for the next videos. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next one.